Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kennedy, Ron Williams, Dana Perino, and Tyrus. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. A lot of breaking news out of Washington. First up, the FBI finally tells disgraced anti-Trump official Peter Strzok, "You're fired." The now former agent played a lead role in both the Russia and Hillary Clinton email investigations. And Omarosa is continuing her furious attacks on the Trump White House after making explosive claims in a new book and releasing secret audio recordings.
He doesn't even know what's happening in his White House. General Kelly, John Kelly, is running this White House, and Donald Trump has no clue what's going on. He's being puppeted, and that's very dangerous for this nation.
The president is firing back on Twitter. Wacky Omarosa, who got fired 3 times on The Apprentice, now got fired for the last time. She never made it, never will. She begged me for a job, tears in her eyes. I said okay. People in the White House hated her. She was vicious but not smart. Omarosa is responding by doubling down on her attacks.
I think it's sad that with all the things that's going on in the country, that he would take time out to insult me and to insult my intelligence. This is his pattern with African Americans. He has no impulse control. It's actually really sad to watch him become unhinged.
Many in the White House are shocked that Omarosa recorded private conversations. Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer is blasting the move.
When she left, she said that great things about the president. The first time she has to make money off of him again, she says quite the opposite. The idea that she brought a personal recording device into the Situation Rooms says all you need to know about Omarosa. She will do anything to further her own being as opposed to uphold the security protocols that guard our national security.
We'll get to Peter Strzok in a second, Dana, but tell me about the level of severity to go into a Situation Room and secretly record the chief of staff. What does that tell you about that person?
Well, it's outrageous, and I wrote a piece on FoxNews.com today in which I said, even if she didn't think that the President of the United States of America deserved better than this, certainly the American people do. And it puts our entire national security at risk. Like, I don't know how Russians get in here into this phone, but they do. And it's just, that's why you have walkers outside of the Situation Room. And there must have been enough concern. Remember the stories about the White House being told you no longer can bring personal devices into the White House. You had to leave them in your car or leave them at home. There must have been more concern about her. The White House is being, I think, quite restrained in talking about the reasons for her departure. I was shocked that she had a recording in the Situation Room. I also think that it was wrong to air it. I don't think that we should encourage any of this. The strange thing for me, too, is just about how quickly this book will go away. And it'll be forgotten in 3 weeks. I learned that about when a book came out during the Bush administration, and it was upsetting to me. The book was horrible to me. It was very disloyal.
McClellan.
But it went out. It was gone within 3 weeks. And you know who told me that was President Bush. He said, don't worry about it. Just let it go. It's irrelevant. And that is true. So for the people who are working in the White House who feel betrayed, just know that it will go away, and she looks terrible for doing this, and I'm sorry that it happened to all of us. I think that what she did was not just to the president, but to the American people.
And what do you think about her credibility, Juan? I mean, she was savagely attacked by the media when she was at the Trump White House, and now she's come out with this explosive tell-all or backstabbing book, some would say, and now everyone's giving her a big platform, and they're listening to everything she has to say.
I don't think that's to me, the news here is one. He hired her. He says we're going to hire the best people. I think that's what he said way back, right?
The best except for her.
Is that what he said? No, I don't think so.
That's what I'm saying.
Small asterisk.
Small asterisk, okay. But he said he's going to hire the best people, and I think lots of people had questions about her credibility. I mean, all that she's known for, I think, was being on The Apprentice and being a reality show villain. And now the White House says, oh, she was saying great things. That's what the tweet said. He said, man, she was saying great things, so I hired her. As long as she said great things about me, she was cool. Then she stopped saying great things. Now she's wacky, and her intelligence, like other black people, is to be questioned. The big issue here for me, Jesse, I didn't know about this non-disclosure agreement. $15,000 a month, and apparently this is true, that when you leave the Trump White House, they give you a job in the upcoming campaign, the 2020 campaign, but you have to sign a deal that says you can't talk about what happened in the White House. And you know what struck me was you go back to people like Tillerson, McMahon, and others, and you say, you know, this White House is pretty chaotic. The Michael Wolff book, very chaotic. And she's saying this White House is very chaotic, backstabbing, and that's why she was taping people. I disagree with Dana. If you go into the Situation Room and there's actual national security being discussed, yeah, you would be in violation. But but what happened here was General Kelly took her in there just as a private space and had a conversation with her with nobody else. So that, you know, I don't know what that is.
And we're actually going to be hearing from the president, who's going to be speaking live any minute now, and we're going to take you there. But before we get there, Kennedy, what do you think of Omarosa? I mean, I cannot believe this is even happening.
I've known her for years. I was fortunate enough to interview her in the aughts when she was clawing her way to the top of that precious and gilded reality TV ladder. I think the president's loyalty might be his biggest Achilles heel, to be completely honest. And, you know, you look at what she might have done within the administration. She wasn't exactly Nikki Haley. Okay? And what it shows, and Dana can speak to this, whenever, and this is for future White House hires, and this is really a good warning for anyone in an administrative position who's going to hire someone in the future. Look into the future and imagine how might this end. And, you know, look at someone like Omarosa. It was never going to end well. No. This was never going to be the kind of exit that was quiet and graceful. And I think General Kelly did the best he could. Yeah, and Tyrus was saying, when we were in the green room, we've had conversations like this. I wish I had had some conversations that were as gentle as that one.
And the president, as Kennedy mentioned, has been burned by being such a loyal person to a fault. I mean, look what happened with Senator Sessions. He kind of rewarded him with the AG job because he was the first senator to endorse, and now he's very dissatisfied with his performance.
First
and
of
you
all,
have Omarosa.
That's the right
Sir, do not compare anyone to
I'm making
Omarosa.
a comment
Omarosa is a
the
unifier.
Factor.
She is a unifier. She is literally the most despised person in the free world. Okay, we didn't like her when she said good things. Both sides, you could argue about anything you want, but you could agree with, like, we don't like her. No one ever liked her. Her book, Do Not Waste Your Time. I can think of a much better book to buy with your time. And even after you buy this one, you can even get this one, or buy them together. But don't waste your time. Omarosa is the worst human beings. There's no loyalty. All she cares about is the camera. That's it. I mean, Trump's mistake, but I'm going to say, I loved him on the phone. Phenomenal. What? Damn, I can't believe that happened. Like, oh, I don't love that at all. Like, I'm pretty sure he was like this.
Right. So the word, I guess, we heard it, that the president acted like he didn't know that she had been fired.
Jesse, did you believe it?
Did I believe what?
That he didn't know?
I think the president wants to go out on a good foot with her and knows she could possibly trash him.
Is that a white
and
lie?
is trying to let her off in a soft way.
Stop.
Of course he knew she would be fired. Of course he knew.
I've been fired a lot, and I've got those calls, and I run into an old boss, and be like, oh my God, what happened? Oh,
right. That's what bosses do.
Really? Oh, well, I'm going to get to the bottom of that.
Didn't make it up to my level.
Can you fix it? No, I'm sorry. The paperwork hasn't been processed.
Jesse, they were playing, you know, because normally there's good cop, bad cop with former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and the president on North Korea. Good cop, bad cop. The funny thing here, she's such a nut. It had to be good cop because they were doing whatever they could.
Well, speaking of bad cop, we have the news that Peter Strzok has been fired finally.
Well done.
Terminated for abusing his position at the FBI to damage President Trump and his election prospects. And we're going to have an IG report out pretty soon, Dana, that's going to, we believe, lay out some of the things that he did in his official capacity during the Trump Russia investigation, which he himself personally launched. Why did it take so long, do you think, for him to get fired?
Well, I think because investigations, if they're going to be thorough, take a little time. The government always takes more time than you would want, but the IG has good reputation amongst both Republicans and Democrats, has a lot of integrity that gets to this result. I do think that it does mean that you could look at the civil service laws and imagine that there could be some changes made there. That does it take too long to adjudicate these cases? Does he have an appeal process that he could go to? Now, the one thing that we don't want, and no American should want, is for civil servants to be fired because of political pressure. That is not good for us as Americans. It's not good for whoever is in charge at the White House, be it Republican or Democrat. So there are reasons that we have all of these safeguards. I just think that maybe they could be sped up a little bit.
I think because he was so senior, Dana, that he doesn't have a lot of recourse. The question, though, is exactly right. Is he being fired to appease the Trump White House because they're angry at him? Mm-hmm. But I notice in all the stories today, there's no reason given for his firing. And I know that in the IG report it said that he obviously had these tweets in which he said, you know, he didn't like Trump. But what the IG report said was there was no evidence that his dislike for Trump affected his job.
That's not true. The IG report said affected the ultimate conclusion of prosecutors, not just Peter Strzok, because the IG went before Congress and said, yes, this is extremely problematic. There were so many lies. There was so much information that was withheld, including some of those critical text messages. And the IG said before Congress, we are going to look further into Peter Strzok. And I have a feeling that was the implication.
I predict Peter Strzok will land a very lucrative gig at CNN.
He'll be on CNN. But here's the thing. When the cosmetics of this was disheartening, and when all the stuff came out, he should have done the right thing. He should have resigned.
Right.
The American people. Like, that's what he should have done. And the investigation, it was completely inappropriate. Regardless of whatever his beliefs was, the fact that we saw those things, he no longer can be impartial in anything. Anytime, if he came messing with me, I'd be like, oh, he's after me because I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat. So he should have resigned.
Okay, I guess the question is, why hold on to him?
But I
think
the IG, now if the IG comes back and says here's evidence that he did something, but the IG report concludes that Strzok did nothing
but the
that
IG
was
himself
implicated
said that there was further investigation taking place.
Well, yeah, but nothing.
In regards to Peter Strzok.
All right, well, Strzok and Omarosa, two villains finally out. We're expecting live remarks from President Trump at any minute. We're going to bring it to you live. Plus, new attacks on the media coming from, you ready? Democrats. Where do you hear the hypocrisy and double standard up next?
The president, not only one who has a problem with the press. Democrats now taking a page from the Trump playbook and going after the media. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi blaming the Fourth Estate for the divide over her leadership of the Democratic Party.
And I know NBC has been on a jag of this. This is one of their priorities, to undermine my prospects as Speaker. But putting that aside, I have not asked one person for a vote. I haven't asked a candidate or an incumbent for a vote.
And hours after saying he believes in a free press, New York City's mayor, Bill de Blasio, reportedly had bodyguards physically remove a credentialed New York Post reporter who tried to ask him questions, legitimate questions, about his administration's many meetings with lobbyists. De Blasio also taking shots at Fox News.
So you'd rather not have the New York Post or Fox News exist?
Look, it's a free country. I'm saying because they exist, we've been changed for the worst.
So, Jesse, you're going to stick up for NBC here and say they're doing right, or you're going to say, hey, wait, they went after Trump too?
Well, here's how NBC operates, and all the media does the same thing. They'll find a story, they'll seize on it, and they'll try to exploit it for partisan gain. For instance, I don't think people at NBC necessarily like Pelosi, so they're trying to create a little bit of an anti-Pelosi wave, and this is how they do this. They will call every single Democrat in Congress and put them on the spot in an official capacity and say, listen, are you going to vote for her as Speaker? Then they will call every Dem nominee. Will you vote for her as Speaker? They will call the staff of all the Democrats in Congress. Will you vote? Then they'll run a poll. And then they'll do a few deep dives and some think pieces, and then they'll maybe book the opponent, and then they'll have a debate on CNN. So they foster this crazy scrum that then forces the hand of politicians. They could have done this with Dianne Feinstein. You know, she had a mole from China working for her for 20 years. They could have asked every senator on the Republican and Democratic side, do you condemn this? Do you feel comfortable with her? They could have asked her opponent out in California. So they can foster these types of the momentum to have people apologize or step down. And when they choose a target, they're relentless, and they can really...
This is a Democrat, so Trump says NBC, fake news, all that. But now they're going after Pelosi. So, Kennedy, how do I make sense of this? What's going on here?
Well, I think you see the president talking about fake news, and he gets very frustrated that some of these big outlets, like the failing New York Times, are coming after him, and they are quite relentless. So I think what this does is the competing biases actually negate each other. So this is a spot of good news for the press, which has been painted so partisan and so anti-Trump. You know, the New York Times, if you remember, they went after Hillary in a number of ways. And one of the entities that she blamed for her failure and her loss, well, she didn't blame her own failure, her own unlikability, that would have been rich. No, she blamed the New York Times. So it's one of those things where instead of taking personal responsibility and doing some thorough examination of your political life and the way people perceive you, it's much easier to blame someone else, like NBC, which has always been very left-friendly. The funny thing is, this is the one issue where Republicans and far-left progressives can agree. None of them like Nancy Pelosi, and she is a great campaign tool for all of them.
Well, so Dana, is it a matter of an adversarial press angering all of our politicians?
Well, look, I think also, where in the world would she get the idea that going after the press works? Okay, I mean, we learned that, okay? But it's also, NBC is going where the story is. Whoever the leader is, they're the one who is going to get attacked. So the two main people that are being attacked from the right or the left in this year's midterm elections is President Trump and Nancy Pelosi, because there is no Democrat equivalent until 2020 of President Trump. So she's going to take all the heat. This was true for Tom Daschle, Harry Reid, Mitch McConnell, Speaker Boehner, Paul Ryan. I mean, this is normal, and it's also where the controversy is. So I think they're following the story. John Fund had a piece in National Review today.
I read that.
I can't. As it's coming out, I'm like, Jesse's going to roll his eyes. But he said that he thinks that perhaps the Democrats might have a October surprise, excuse me, that they will pull Nancy Pelosi from any consideration for leadership so that the Democrats have a better chance of beating Republicans in November. Don't know if it's true, just passing along John Fund's idea.
So we have a moment of comedy here, Tyrus, where people are saying, well, maybe the press is just doing their job. They're going after all these people at the top.
Well, first of all, 20-year mole, that's pretty good moling. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. Feinstein had a mole 20 years. Wow, that's a lot of recordings. Here's the thing. And I always equate things to my brain. I always think sports. If my GM we have a losing season for a decade, it's probably time for the GM to go. And if the fans won't do it because they love him, and Democrats just don't seem to ever want to make an aggressive move without a lot of help. Yeah, unless you're Cleveland, right? So and let's just say that maybe NBC's a little bit to the left, and they might want to use their platform to maybe get that horrible GM out. Yeah. So they start early now. Maybe one of the players will get up and be like, you know what, I'll take that job. Like, this is a great idea for me. I think it's more they're trying to ignite the base and they're trying to ignite their party. Do something. They're just assuming there's this wave coming, but there's no thunder and lightning or rain to build it up. So I think it's more of like, if she won't go on her own, we got to get rid of her ourselves.
I think they're doing the same thing to Hillary Clinton. I think their insurance policy is to make sure she doesn't run again.
She's got to go.
And, and it's not as though you can't claim that the Democratic establishment or the mainstream media is sexist, because they have fallen all over themselves, falling in love with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So have we. And see, so that's where also we feed we go to the story. Where's the story? She's new. She's the energy. Tom Perez, the head of the DNC, says she's the future of the Democratic Party. We're like, really? Okay, we'll check it out, and we'll run all the clips, and we'll see it. And so,
future's bright.
Guess what? If you're in the news business, you go to where the story is.
Yeah.
You know what strikes me is when the stories came out about like Ryan Zinke or Scott Pruitt. I think Pruitt's the one who tried to get his wife a Chick-fil-A franchise.
There were other things that he
got that great lotion in the middle of the night.
Yes, but then they say fake news. So I don't get it. I mean, is it fake or not? Did NBC lean left, lean right? I don't get it.
I think it leans left, Juan. Open your eyes.
Well, but not in this case. Unless what Tyrus said is right. They're trying to get rid of
secure a good future for the Democratic Party.
Okay. Should Democrats be worried about a new poll showing party voters supporting, get this, socialism? We're going to discuss that on The Five straight ahead.
President Trump set to speak any minute now at a fundraising event in Utica, New York. Is that Utica or Utica?
Utica.
Utica, excuse me. I'm from Wyoming. Anyway, we'll bring it to you live when he steps on stage, and you will carry the whole thing so you hear it. Meantime, is this more evidence of the Democratic Party's shift to the far left? According to a new Gallup poll, Democrats view socialism more positively than they do capitalism. 57% hold a positive view of socialism, and only 47% view capitalism positively, which is lower than in any of Gallup's previous 3 measures of the same poll. Meanwhile, Republicans remain much more positive about capitalism than socialism. Tyrus, I'm going to go to you first. What is going on?
Well, when you're on the losing team and you really can't get on a starting and you can't break the plane, you got to have something new. So go with socialism. It's new, hasn't been done for a while. You bring it back. It's like kind of like an old movie. You just revamp it, and we know how those usually turn out when you like Death Wish. They brought back Death Wish, and no one saw it. So the Republicans have the economy and so on lock. So we'll just start some new stuff like socialism. All for one, one for all.
That's what I was going to say. They have a death wish if they want to go with socialism. If the Democrats make a midterm election about socialism versus capitalism, they're going to lose and probably never win again. I find it refreshing that the Democrats have come out for socialism because now they're not lying to our face. For years, moderate Democrats pretended to be moderate. They'd get elected and then they'd go hard left. Then the voters would kick them out and then 2 years later forget and then re-elect Democrats. A socialist, I think a socialist is kind of like a Democrat after a few drinks. You know, you've had a few, you're just saying, you know what, I want the government to take over everything. And you start loosening up, you tell the people how you really feel. But socialism has never worked and never will work, and it's definitely not going to work in America.
Juan, I think obviously we are oversimplifying.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm glad you gave me that.
Socialism, if you look at Venezuela, you could say, obviously, that is a system that does not work.
Right.
Is what the Democrats trying to do is to talk a little bit more about financial anxiety across the country for things like health care in particular, and that they're trying to figure out a way to reach people and try to understand that the problem is, and I'll have you answer this, do they have a problem in trying to explain how their version of this would work and how we would pay for it?
Well, no, because I don't think they label it as socialism per se. True. And remember, what they're doing is appealing to exactly what you said, people who have concerns about high cost of prescription drugs or high cost of medical care or the high cost of education. So what they're talking about here is not Venezuela. They're not saying, oh yeah, we support nationalization of major industries or confiscation of someone's wealth. What they're saying is we think there should be a social safety net in a time of rising income inequality. People should not be allowed to fall through, that there is a role for the government in terms of saying, and I think if Greg was here, he would say, with increasing automation, robotics and the like, there are more people who are going to be pushed out. So there's big debate about things like guaranteed income, making sure everybody can have some
support. Kennedy,
support.
then do conservatives have a problem in trying to explain how there is a social safety net that does work and that it's better than other systems?
Yeah, and the difference is you're talking about a mosquito net, or actually a little net to catch jellyfish like SpongeBob, and a circus net that people on the trapeze fall into. And you have vastly different size nets. It's not just a question of whether or not people are well-intentioned and believe those who cannot take care of themselves deserve assistance. That's a given, and anyone would say that. The problem is you are taking over the means of production, and you are forcing people, you are redistributing people's wealth and forcing other people to pay for everyone else's health care using the false premise, well, it's expensive now, it'll be so much less expensive when the government handles it. That is never the case. Yeah. And there are never safeguards or parameters, and these programs only tend to grow and grow and grow. And once you have one, it's impossible to pull back. I still blame Republicans, because I think if Republicans had come up with a legislative fix, a real comprehensive one for Obamacare, we wouldn't be having the conversation about socialism at all.
So what does it tell you that they didn't come up with any fix?
I think that it was a gross failure.
Repeal and replace, Juan.
I don't think they planned
I'm still waiting for the replace.
Well, I'm glad you said it.
I maintain that they should have done tax reform first.
Yes.
Let the economy show what it can do when it is unleashed. and then have the conversation about a repeal.
Absolutely right.
But no one listens to me.
But that kind of a
I listen, and Greg said yes, and thank you for noticing and remembering.
Of course he's watching on vacation.
Yeah, he's on my back nonstop.
But Kennedy, what would you say to our seniors who say, we love Social Security? Government does that right, or it's Medicare. Government does that right.
There are things, that's why I'm saying conservatives can say that there are programs that work. We can figure out a way to make them work better and to last longer by some little tweaks.
And you have to be bold and brave and not worry about being reelected, but really tackle entitlements, not for seniors, not for people who are enjoying Medicare and Social Security right now, but for younger generations who should have the opportunity to invest
when you can do that
into their own future.
In a second term. Okay, how did this happen? New security concerns at airports nationwide after an employee actually steals a plane. Details next.
Troubling new questions are being raised about airport security after an employee stole and crashed a commercial airplane in the Seattle area. That happened Friday night. 29-year-old Horizon Air ground service agent Richard Russell somehow managed to gain access to an empty airliner and took off, flying in loops, and he was chased by military jets before crashing into a small island nearby. He did not survive. Investigators now working to determine how he did it, and the incident has heightened worries about gaps in aviation security. Jesse, I will ask you, is this a dangerous blueprint for some other unstable soul who perhaps has access, the same kind of access to these aircraft?
It could be. I mean, we're lucky he was just a troubled soul instead of a jihadist.
Right.
Could you imagine that? He would have flown it right into the Needle or something like that in Seattle. You have a very small circle of people that you can trust on these airlines and on the tarmac like that, and they go through a lot of vetting, and they go through background checks that are very vigilant. And you have to be able to trust people. And obviously this guy was untrustworthy. There was no way to know that. He went up in the air with no training whatsoever and was doing all sorts of tricks. He did tell air traffic control that he was not a danger to other people, just himself. So the jets that they scrambled from the military didn't try to take him out because he wasn't going into a civilian area. They tried to guide him out to sea, but unfortunately he just crashed and killed himself. But it is just really scary that he wasn't using this plane as a missile.
Yeah, and air traffic control, I mean, they stayed calm and they did whatever they could to engage him. They also scrambled some fighter jets to escort him. Was this the right response?
Well, I think so, but I have to tell you, if you were sitting in line at the TSA checkpoint, you're trying to get through so that you can get on an airplane, and you have to take your shoes off, and you have to take all this other stuff off. You've got to get your liquids out, and you've got to get all this stuff out, and you can't take an apple, and there's all of these rules, and they've done all of this stuff. And yet, somebody who actually works for the airline, like, nothing is foolproof. Like, so I'm not saying that I don't want the security at the airports. I think that we ask our TSA agents to do really difficult work and with frustrated customers. But, yeah, this is dangerous. And I don't know how you stop it necessarily. But, again, if you see something, say something. That includes the uncomfortable feeling sometime of snitching on one of your coworkers.
And his family said, you know, we never would have expected this. Even some of his friends were interviewed and said that he showed no signs of being troubled or depressed, even though he admitted to air traffic control that he had a few screws loose.
That's his language.
Yep.
That's what he said about himself. So what strikes me is that after 9/11, this is the first time since 9/11 we've seen an aircraft stolen and taken up. But those guys in 9/11, they actually had some pilot training. This guy had no pilot's license, and then he gained access to the aircraft, and you have to know how to move in sequence the levers to get the plane started, and you have to talk to people, and apparently everybody just went along with it, and those incredible maneuvers you were just watching, they're real. That's what he was doing. This is a guy who, from all we know, from his family, from everybody else, never flew an airplane. And then he crashes into the deserted side of a small island that has about 12 people living on it. So I don't think he was out to do any damage. The concern I would have sitting here in New York is, wow, post 9/11, this is going on after all the steps we've taken? Wow.
Sometimes the government can't protect you from everything, Tyrus.
Well, I mean, he did tell them he had played some video games from his flight experience, which is it's funny, but it's sad because of the situation. I think this is a very unique situation where an individual decided this is the way he wanted to go. And this was, he wasn't trying to involve anybody else. And the trip, I think he just did, I'm going out in the blaze of glory, and he made sure he didn't hurt anybody else. Maybe hit the water, probably be a more comfortable ending, but he hit the wall. So I don't look at this like, I'm not worried about airport security as much as I'm
not worried about copycats.
No, I think anyone who watched that, who thought that was a fun way to end your life, would probably need to listen to the Black Box, because it was a really long, horrible death of screaming and crying. Oof. So again, it's unfortunate, but if we have to calm down for a minute and let's not get teams together in panels. Well, I guess we already did that. But to find out what was the thing. Here was a guy who said he was at the end of it. He was done. He was tired, and he chose to go out on a plane. And he didn't go after anybody else. So thank you for that. But you know.
Do you think they're going to have any other? Will there be new rules and regulations for airport workers who have?
I'm sure that people that are worried about liability, yes, they'll be talking about it.
All right, and we will be talking about you. And have you ever wondered why you're feeling so stressed while you're on vacation? Mercy, it is August, and a new study finds some surprising answers, which we will reveal. That's happening next.
This is a Fox News alert. President Trump is at a fundraiser for Claudia Tenney. They have opened it to the press, and therefore we will bring it to you live. He's there. She's in Utica, New York, running for Congress for a re-election. Here's the president.
She has been incredible in Congress. She's helped us so much. She is just a wonderful person. She said, could you possibly come up to this community that, as you know, I know very well because I have a lot of friends here. I'm looking at all the faces. I think I know about a third of them, maybe a little bit more. And I just want to thank you very much for all you've done. And hopefully we put Claudia right over the top where she belongs. I think I don't think she's going to have any problem. But, you know, I look at this area in the state. Ed Cox is here, by the way, a great friend of mine. Where's Ed? Ed, what are you doing back there? What are you doing back there? Thank you, Ed, for being here. New York Republican State Committee, and I think it's doing okay, right? You know, considering the fact that we have the highest taxes in the nation in New York, and we should have no taxes if Andrew Cuomo, if he took over and if he, now think of it, if they would have allowed a little bit of fracking and taken some of the richness out of the land, which, by the way, is being sucked away by other states. You know, they don't have state lines underground. You know what that means? That means it just goes down, down, down. We don't get it. You look at what's happened in Pennsylvania with the money they've taken in. You look at what happened in Ohio with the money they've taken in. They're fracking. They're drilling a little bit. They're creating jobs. And this place, it's just so sad to see it. And we had the potential to do it better than anybody, and it's dissipating. It's dissipating. Because that stuff flows. Do you understand that? It flows. And they probably have those little turns. You know, they make the turns at the border. It goes like this, right? And all of a sudden, someday you're not going to have that underground maybe so much, and it's a shame. Because you could have had no taxes. You could have had the lowest taxes instead of the highest taxes. And it's very sad to see what's happened with New York. I was actually thinking of running for governor, but then I decided. You remember, right? No, I was serious. I was thinking because I said with some the use of brain power and common sense, you people could have had a boomtown up here. This could have been Boomtown, USA. You know, you have among the richest in the United States of sitting under your land and you don't take it, and other people are taking it, meaning other states are taking it. And I said to myself, I think maybe I'm going to consider running for governor very strongly. And then I decided to run for president instead. And that worked out. I want to thank Shel Farley. Where's Shel? She's around here someplace. Good luck. I know I see you on television a lot. You're working hard. I think you have like 3 different parties. I don't think Ed's too worried about that, right? You're okay with that, Ed, right? She's got the Conservative Party also. And I've watched you, and I know you're really working hard. And honestly, on the merits, you should win. You know, I know your opponent very well. She's been up to my office looking for campaign contributions over the years. And she's very aggressive on contributions, but she's not very aggressive on getting things done. And because she hasn't gotten very much done. If anything, has she gotten anything done? One bill. One bill to rename a post office. You just go in and fight. You may see some big changes. You may see some things happen. You know, they saw it in my election. Of course, I felt I was going to win. We're having these massive crowds. And a lot of people that traveled with me, I'll never forget, there was a certain show on television. And the two people that truly, these were reporters, they truly hated your favorite president. Hated. They hated. And they were watching a speech. I was making a speech. We had 25, 30,000 people in this massive auditorium, stadium actually. And they looked at each other. They just looked. They said, do you believe this? They were not happy. That was the day before. And then the day of the election, they said, you know, I guess that's the way it goes. But I felt all you had to do is see the enthusiasm. So, Shell, I can say this. You may surprise a lot of people. You may surprise, because people know it's wrong what's going on. And she's just a puppet of Schumer. You know that. He put her there. I've never seen anybody like this. Your opponent, okay, your wonderful opponent, was the most pro-gun person that you've ever seen. The day she got that given position, she all of a sudden became like anti, like 100%. So people get it. I found that. You know, in the campaign against crooked Hillary, I found that people... That's true. I found that people get it. So I just wanted to, so I wish you luck, and Ed, keep up the good work. You're doing really well. You vote for somebody other than our fantastic Claudia. You're voting for higher taxes. They want to raise your taxes. They want to actually end these massive tax cuts that everybody in this room has gotten, that have been so popular, that have really made our economy the strongest it's ever been in the history of our nation. This is the strongest economy we've had, with the best jobs market. So they want to raise your taxes. They want to open your borders. You know, they want to open borders, okay? They want those borders to be open so nice and wide, let everybody flow in. And they think they're going to be Democrats, right? They probably are, maybe, who knows? They might not. But they want them to come, and that's one of the reasons. I really believe that's one of the reasons, because a lot of other reasons don't make a lot of sense. But they want open borders. They don't mind crime, because it comes with open borders, so obviously they don't mind crime. They hate ICE, because ICE, you know, is rough and tough, and that's what we need with certain kinds of people. I don't think that MS-13 fully understands the niceties of life. Do you think? So these people are great people. These are great people, but they're strong people. They're tough people, which is what we need. They don't like law enforcement. They don't want to take care of law enforcement. They don't take care of our military. They don't want to take care of our vets. Other than that, they're fantastic. Do you agree with that? Other than that, they're wonderful. But, and you better be careful, because you do have that big gun plant. How far is that down the road? Where is it? 1 mile down the road? Well, you better be careful, because they want to end your Second Amendment, and they're putting a big move on it. And Cuomo wants to end your Second Amendment more than anybody. Cuomo wants to take away your Second Amendment. Now, he called me and he said, I'll never run for president against you. But maybe he wants to. Oh, please do it. Please. Please. No. He did say that. He did that. Maybe he means it. The one thing we know, and they do say, anybody that runs against Trump suffers. That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. But, you know, really, we talk about Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. Maxine Waters, the new face of the Democrat Party. Maxine Waters, she's a real beauty. Maxine. Boy, oh boy, I watch her. Crazy.
This is Fox News Alert. President Trump is at a fundraiser for Claudia Tenney. They have opened it to the press, and therefore we will bring it to you live. He's there. She's in Utica, New York. running for Congress for a re-election. Here's the president.
She has been incredible in Congress. She's helped us so much. She is just a wonderful person. She said, could you possibly come up to this community that, as you know, I know very well because I have a lot of friends here. I'm looking at all the faces. I think I know about a third of them, maybe a little bit more. And I just want to thank you very much for all you've done. And hopefully we put Claudia right over the top where she belongs. I think I don't think she's going to have any problem. But, you know, I look at this area in the state. Ed Cox is here, by the way, a great friend of mine. Where's Ed? Ed, what are you doing back there? What are you doing back there? Thank you, Ed, for being here. New York Republican State Committee, and I think it's doing okay, right? You know, considering the fact that we have the highest taxes in the nation in New York, and we should have no taxes if Andrew Cuomo, if he took over and if he, now think of it, if they would have allowed a little bit of fracking and taken some of the richness out of the land, which, by the way, is being sucked away by other states. You know, they don't have state lines underground. You know what that means? That means it just goes down, down, down. We don't get it.